We have with us a one Kevin Pelton from Basketball Insider. He also does some work with the Pacers, with the Storm, and of course on ESPN. You can follow him at Twitter at kpelton at Twitter. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, and as you can see, sometimes I wear tuxedos to games.
Right. That. Why were you wearing? Okay. You'll have to retweet this picture. I wish I had it to put up there the full thing, but Kevin was wearing a black tuxedo with, was it a red tie or a red vest? I mean, it was a choice look. What was driving that look that night?
Well, my cousin was getting married the next day, and I was in the wedding, in the bridal party, so I had the tux on hand. I picked it up a couple days earlier, and I was like, well, when else am I going to have this to wear to a WNBA
Why
game?
just wear it once? Why just wear
Exactly.
it
Get your
once?
money's worth.
Were you a popular guy that night?
The funny thing is that the players did not make note of it nearly as much as I expected. I didn't get any comments on it from them, but every time our PR person saw me all night long, she laughed. So that was reward enough.
Yeah, well, that's good. Nice. So, for those who don't know, Kevin works with the WNBA champion, Seattle Storm. Um, One thing that's really interesting is this summer a lot of players, a big talk surrounding the NBA has been going overseas. WNBA players basically play multiple seasons going overseas and often earning much more money there. Talk about that and that kind of dynamic as players switch back and forth between leagues.
Yeah, I mean, for them, in many ways, it is their on season. They spend more time playing, usually in Europe, sometimes in China and other places, than they do in the WNBA. And like you said, yeah, for most of them, it is the dominant source of their earnings. In some cases, because the WNBA league maximum is so low, they're making, many multiples of what they're making here. So it leads to some interesting situations. I mean, you have the same kind of issues with women's basketball teams in Europe as you do with the men's teams, where sometimes they don't pay. There's strange situations, teams fold, things like that. So, it's an adventure overseas, but I think over time, players get accustomed to it. That's what the NBA guys who potentially go over this upcoming season, they're not going to have that experience. It's going to be new for them. It's not like, the WNBA players or the guys, the Paul Shirleys of the world who are over there year after year, where you understand kind of what's going on. For them, it's going to be all new.
Yeah. So you're a big stats guy. Do you even like basketball?
No, I still haven't ever seen a game.
Okay. Well, because you're great with the numbers. Actually, I know you've seen a game because I sat with you in a bar in Boston and watched it. Um, what do you think is the stat right now that people, if you're going to be a basketball fan, like a really informed one, what's the one stat that you really need to understand, and can you explain it to me right now?
Well, I mean, I think at the most basic level, you definitely need to understand team offensive and defensive ratings because they're so relatively simple, just points per 100 possessions, but they also explain so much in terms of team performance and are so much more robust as measures than just looking at points per game scored and allowed, which for years was how it's done. And I mean, still the official rankings, that the NBA sends out, it's who's allowed the fewest points, who's allowed the most points, with no, accounting for pace whatsoever.
Right. But so offensive rating is, I think, fairly instructive. Like people that is really clear. Defensive rating seems to be more controversial as to how much that actually tells us about a person's defensive impact. Um, am I making that up, or is that a current controversy?
Well, I think when you're applying it at the defense at the individual level, yeah, I mean, just because of the fact that so much isn't there in the box score, like you guys were talking about in the Dennis Rodman segment, that uh, blocks, steals, and rebounds, that's rebounds obviously are almost every play, but blocks and steals are like 10 to 15% of defensive possessions. There's this other 85% that is happening, and good things are being done and bad things are being done that just doesn't get counted whatsoever at the individual level.
Right, and rebounds are kind of like the statistic that I think people are really figuring out how to make that reflect winning. And Hollinger's PER uses it in one way. Dave Barry's Wins Added uses it in another way. Where do you stand on rebounds? And do you think that Ethan is going to talk to you a little bit about rebounding, about Rodman specifically, but where do you rank rebounding in the kind of echelon of statistics? And is this something where we need to go way further than just offensive and defensive rebounds to start thinking about, percentages of offensive rebounds that lead to putbacks, or these things that people are keeping track of?
Well, I think the big question that we still have to answer is kind of how rebounding fits together on a team. We know at the team level that defensive rebounding is very important. Offensive rebounding tends not to be, because there's a choice that a lot of teams make that emphasize defense, that we're going to get back at all costs and not even go after offensive rebounds. So it's less important. But at the individual level, it's not entirely clear that one great rebounder leads to a great rebounding team, as opposed to taking away some of those opportunities from their teammates. On that debate, I think I tend to fall. There's the extremes there would probably be Barry, where rebounding is paramount, and it's something that you can do without using any possessions offensively. So rebounding specialists are hugely valuable. The other extreme is actually, it's not a Hollinger. It's people that have argued that there's so significant diminishing returns to rebounding that it's just guys stealing them from each other, and it's a choice of who gets that rebound, as opposed to we're going to get that rebound instead of the other team. And I suppose on that one, I would fall somewhere in the middle, because I do certainly think there's value to rebounding. I don't think it's all that, but I don't think that it's quite as significant as Barry's statistics would indicate.